Once, in a village where the mountains cupped the valley like two hands, there lived a blacksmith who forged one key every year, and only one. He always began the same way, at first frost, when the river iced at its edges. He would take the last unopened bar of iron from the shelf behind his forge, hold it to the light, and begin to hammer. His father had been a locksmith before him, and his father's father a smith before that, but it was his father who had first walked the blacksmith, then a boy, out to the edge of the valley to see the door. It stood alone against a cliff face, older than anyone's memory of it, its iron banding gone the color of dried blood. No handle. No visible lock. Just a keyhole, dark as a closed eye. "What's inside?" the boy had asked. His father had only smiled, the way people do when they don't know either. "Whatever you need most," he said. "That's what they say." Then, quieter, almost to himself, "The lock isn't waiting for a key. It's waiting for..." He never finished the sentence. He died that winter, mid-key, the iron still warm on the anvil. The blacksmith finished it for him, his first key, and carried it to the door, and it did not fit. Nor did the one the year after, nor any of the 19 since. Still he forged one every autumn. It was, by then, less a search than a season, like planting or harvest. The villagers stopped asking about it. Some pitied him. Some admired him. He had learned, in the making, to shape iron so fine that people came from 3 valleys over for his ordinary locks, his ordinary keys, the kind that actually opened things. He never seemed to notice the irony. Then, one grey morning in his 20th year of forging, an old stranger appeared at his gate. She was thin as a reed, dust to her knees, and carried nothing but a walking stick worn smooth by a hand that had held it a long time. "I've come to see the door," she said. "I've heard of it since I was a girl." He nodded, expecting the question that always followed, "Do you have a key that might fit?" and found himself already reaching for that year's, still warm from the quench. But she only sat on the bench outside his forge and watched him work, and did not ask. "You're not curious what's behind it," he said, finally. "I didn't come to open it," she said. "I came to see it." There's a difference, though most people my age forget there was ever a choice. He turned the key over in his tongs, and for the first time in 20 years, felt the shape of the question underneath his hands. He had spent 2 decades making keys. He could not remember, standing there, what he had once wanted the door to give him. That evening he walked her to the cliff face, the way his father had walked him. She studied the dark keyhole a long while, not reaching for anything, not even her stick. Then she turned to leave, satisfied, as though the seeing had been the whole of her errand. He held out the key anyway, the year's key, still faintly warm. "Try it," he said. "Please." She slid it into the dark, and it did not turn, and neither of them was surprised. But she did not hand it back right away. She held it up between them, catching the last light. "You know," she said, "a key like this could open 40 doors in this valley tonight. Doors with someone standing behind them, cold, waiting to be let in." She pressed it back into his palm. "This one was never going to open. I think some part of you has known that since you were a boy standing where I'm standing." He walked home slowly that night, the key loose in his coat pocket, his father's unfinished sentence turning over in him in a way it never had before. The lock isn't waiting for a key. It's waiting for, perhaps his father hadn't stopped because he didn't know the ending. Perhaps he'd stopped because the boy needed to spend a lifetime finding it himself. The next morning, a neighbor's daughter came running, breathless, locked out of her house, her mother ill inside, no spare key to be found. The blacksmith reached into his coat without thinking and drew out that year's key, freshly made, still faintly warm. It did not fit her lock either. But he knelt at her door with his tools that same hour and forged one, right there in the cold, that did. He never carried a key to the cliff face again. He kept forging every season, sometimes more than one, but each was bound for an actual door, an actual hand waiting on the other side. And that is why, to this day, if you lose your way into your own home in that valley, it is the blacksmith's forge you knock on first, though no one there speaks any more of the door in the cliff, or wonders much what it was keeping.